everyone, welcome to Must Read Monday. My name is Dabney. I'm the Young Adult Librarian at the Twin Lakes Library System, and I use they, them pronouns. This week we are going to be talking about the theme of magical creatures. So we have a complete reading list in Beanstack and on Goodreads. You can find a link to our Goodreads page if you go to our website, tlosga.org. Go to the Young Adult page and you'll see the Goodreads link on there. So within the magical creatures theme, I'm specifically going to focus on dragon books. So dragons, gotta love them. I picked out 5 books to tell you about today. So the first one is Talon by Julie Kagawa. This is the first book in a 5-book series. You can read it as an ebook or listen to it as an audiobook on Hoopla or on eReadKids. They also have the audiobook, which is what I listened to last week. So this book is about Ember and Dante. They are siblings and they're moving from their training base in the Midwest to sunny California. And even though they look like your usual carefree teens, they are actually dragons. And so they've come to this town in California to learn how to blend in with human society. So at first, Ember is sort of hesitant about engaging with humans, but soon she gets wrapped up in her new life. She's making friends, she's learning to surf and going out to get smoothies. But what she's not really enjoying as much as that is her training. She and Dante are both going through separate training programs, and her sessions are just increasingly brutal, and her trainer is just really sadistic and awful, and Ember is not enjoying that facet of her life at all. So they're both being groomed to have future roles within this organization called Talon, which is a dragon-ruled organization, secret organization in the world. And while they're in this town, Ember meets Riley, who is a rogue dragon. So he is kind of in hiding from Talon and sort of working to subvert Talon. And she also meets another newcomer to town, Garrett. And so Garrett is kind of brooding and mysterious, and she doesn't really know what's going on with him, but he is actually from the Order of St. George, and they hunt and kill dragons, and he and his partner have been sent there to find Ember. They don't know Ember is the dragon, so they're kind of there to do reconnaissance and figure out who the dragon is. So, lots of drama. I really like this book, and you get 3 different points of view. You get Ember, you get Riley, and you get Garrett. So I liked having those different viewpoints because they all represent, I guess, a different perspective on the world of dragons. So you've got, Talon and the Rogues and then St. George, and I liked learning about all of them and kind of seeing them come together and collide. And I thought the story was really good. I enjoyed all the characters, the world building of all these dragons who can shift into human form and blend in with our world. I thought that was really cool. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the rest of the series. And then our next book is Hunter by Mercedes Lackey, and I'm going to pull up the cover on my phone because we don't have a physical copy in our library, but you can get the audiobooks of this book and the rest of the trilogy on Hoopla, which is how I listen to it. So, ta-da! I love this cover so much. These new covers are amazing. But this trilogy is set 200 years in the future, where our world has been ravaged by war and nuclear bombs and a cataclysmic event that allowed monsters to come into our world from the other world. Humanity has only been able to survive thanks to the hunters. So hunters are humans who are born with the ability to use magic and specifically to summon hounds from the other world. And these hounds, they don't really look like our type of hounds. Like, they don't really look like dogs. They can come in all different shapes, but they join together with hunters to fight the monsters. And so, like, humans are kind of living in these different isolated pockets around the United States, in places that are either uninhabitable or toxic to all these monsters that have come through. And Joyo is one of those people. She is living out in like a remote monastery in the Rocky Mountains, and she is a hunter, and she's training with a group of hunters in this monastery. But she's summoned to go to Apex, which is kind of like the capital city. Like, the United States doesn't really exist anymore, but Apex is this huge city that is protected, and that's where the majority of the population lives. And so she comes to Apex to join their hunters. But when she arrives, she discovers that in this city, like, hunters are treated as like reality TV stars. Like, they have cameras that follow them all the time and record everything they do. And she's like pretty overwhelmed and trying to fit into this new place. And even though like it's a protected city, the populace is being led to believe that like monsters are not a threat, that this is more just like, oh, the hunters are doing this to entertain you. But as Joyo stays there, she begins to learn like that is not the case, that danger is even more imminent than she's been led to believe. So that's a lot going on. And when I read this, like, I listened to this book, I really, really, really got into it. Partly because it reminded me of Pacific Rim, which is a movie where giant monsters come into our world. It also reminded me of the Hunger Games, just the fact of like this, life and death situation of hunters battling monsters that's being like broadcast to the population as entertainment. And the fact that like, there's this whole false narrative going on. And then also Apex kind of reminded me of the Capitol in the Hunger Games. So I thought it was like a really cool idea. I liked all the characters. I liked the monster element because while some of the monsters are kind of, I don't know, almost like Godzilla-like, there's also, all the creatures from like folklore and fairy tales as well. So there's like banshees and vampires, and like kind of the top tier monster are the Fae. So they're like extremely powerful, very intellectual, and I think they're gonna play like an even bigger role in the next two books. So I'm excited to find out about that. My next book is kind of like a classic dragon book. If you say you like dragons, people will probably tell you, hey, you should read Eragon by Christopher Paolini. So this is the first book in a 4-book series. So in this book, it is set in the fantasy world of Alagacia. I'm not sure if I said that right. Which is home to dragons, elves, dwarves, humans, and other races of beings. And the story follows Eragon. So the beginning of the story, he's 15 years old. He's out hunting when he finds this dragon egg, but he doesn't know it's a dragon egg. He thinks like maybe it's something cool he can sell. So he brings it home and is very surprised when it hatches into a dragon. So the dragon's name is Saphira, so she becomes like Eragon's responsibility, and he quickly discovers that other people have been looking for this dragon egg when they come to the village looking for him. And so he has to run away with Saphira, and he's guided by this local storyteller, like wise man named Rom. So they leave, and that is just the beginning of their epic quest and journey. Throughout the book, you go to all these different locations within the world. You meet tons of other characters, good and bad. There's lots of adventure and like plotting and fighting, and I think I haven't read this in a very long time. So this book came out in 2003, which I was in high school at the time, and I remember really loving it and getting really into the series. And part of the reason why, other than just enjoying the story, is that Christopher Paolini was actually a teenager when he wrote this first book. So I think this book was published when he was like 19 or 20. So I thought that, that's really cool. Like, this huge, epic fantasy was written by a teenager, and that's just really inspiring. So yeah, you should definitely check it out. The ebook and audiobook are available on RBDigital. And I'll also say that he recently had a book of short stories come out that are set in that world, and you can check that out from us as well. Our fourth book is The Last Namsara by Kristen Ciccarelli. So this book, I read it, I think it came out in 2017, so my memory is not the freshest, but it is about Asha, the daughter of the king of Furgard. But even though she is a princess, instead of living like a life of ease and luxury, what she does is she goes out and hunts and kills dragons. Haunted by mistakes from her past, Asha seeks redemption by ridding the kingdom of dragons. She goes out and lures the dragons from hiding by telling them forbidden stories of her people. Looming in the background is her forced betrothal to the cruel commandant, who is the leader of their country's armies. And when she's given like an opportunity to gain her freedom and get out of this betrothal by killing the most powerful dragon, she leaps at the chance, but in the process discovers secrets about her world that just change everything for her. So this is the first book of a trilogy, and like I said, I don't really remember that much from it, but I did enjoy it at the time when I read it. I liked kind of the element of the dragons and like how this society has kind of locked down all these stories from their people and like forbidden them from telling them, because like apparently like the people used to have like a good relationship with dragons, like kind of they'd both help each other, and now that's like not the case. So I did enjoy this one. I thought it was a cool concept. I think the main character at first, you don't really like her, but as things go on and she learns more and she changes and she becomes someone you can really root for. And this one you can read it or listen to it on Hoopla. There's ebooks and audiobooks. And my final book is Fireborne by Rosaria Munda. And this was my favorite book of the list. I just read it this weekend. I finished it last night at like 2 in the morning, and it was one originally I wasn't going to do because it's not available online. It's only available in our collection. It's the first book of a trilogy, but it's told from 2 character points of view. So I'll just start off with a summary. Like 9 years ago, Lee's family was killed in a revolution. So they were like one of the 3 ruling families of dragon lords, and they were overthrown by Atreus, who is like the revolution's leader and hero. And so Lee was there and actually witnessed like his entire family being killed and tortured, and he was only spared by Atreus. So he was taken to an orphanage, and so he's growing up there like really traumatized by what happened to him, and he meets this girl named Annie, who's the other character whose point of view you get. And so he kind of takes her under his wing and is like protecting her from bullies. And she is kind of teaching him how to blend in because prior to the revolution, she was what they would call a serf or a peasant. And post-revolution, they've like done away with those classifications in society. So she's kind of teaching him how to appear as someone from her class instead of like the ruling class. So anyways, they become friends, but their friendship is really tested when Annie finds out that it was actually Lee's father who killed her entire family and burned them alive with dragon fire. So obviously a problem, but they work through it. And so now, like, when the book starts, it's 9 years later. They are both dragon riders. Like, they tested into this program to become dragon riders, and they're competing in this like tournament to find out who is going to be the first rider and lead the dragon armies for their country. And during this tournament, it's really high stakes and high pressure, and that kind of like a lot of the trauma that they went through together is like coming to the surface, and there's tensions between them that's kind of pulling them apart. At the same time, there is a new threat to their country that enters into the story, and so they're both having to deal with all like so much. It's yeah, it's really good. I think I read it in just like 2 days. It's really well paced. I got to the point where I just could not put it down because I had to know like what was going to happen. It's really well told. Annie and Lee are both really great characters. I really liked all the side characters. I especially liked sort of the world building as far as how their society is structured and like the political aspects to it and like the education system. I don't know. It was just very good, and I like the way that, as Lee and Annie are getting into these like higher positions within their society, they're starting to learn like, this ideal that they've been taught of, how their society is supposed to be really equal. It's actually not, and they're trying to figure out like, what do we do about this? So I thought it was great. If you have read Red Rising, which is not technically YA, but it's by Pierce Brown. If you read that, I think you'd really like this. They both have very strong influences from like Greek and Roman classics. Like, they both very much acknowledge that, and it's so good. I can't wait for book 2, which doesn't come out till next year, but I'm excited for it. So those are my recommendations. Hopefully you all can check them out. But yeah, I hope you have a great week. Bye!